robots, junk food, and talentless tennis. Welcome to Mark and Pete on why the future is automated, overregulated, and still wildly incompetent. This is Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Here's our first story.
Automatic busybody. A robot can do a lot. A human does much less. A robot can pick and plot. A human suffers stress. A robot will clean on the spot. A human can make a mess. A robot does things on the dot. A human will regress. A robot can work cold or hot. A human may transgress. But what a robot has not got is a trade union to address. Yes, I think that we can all relate to that. Well, interestingly, Hyundai Motor Group says it will roll out human-like robots in its factories from the year 2028 onwards. And this is a major initiative and a race to get the new technology into all of their factories. Mr. Pete, I know that many people are concerned that robots are good in some ways, but they might replace people. What say you about this new form of technology?
Well, if robots are better at it, why shouldn't they do it? That's what I think. I don't think. The thing is, it works. This is my take on this sort of issue when it arises every now and then. I'm thinking back to the time of the Luddites a few hundred years ago, and obviously I was there.
Yes,
so it was a tough time.
Of course you were.
They were complaining against mechanization, chiefly in farming, but this could be applied. Their set of reaction can be applied to people today. You're a Luddite in that what you don't want robots doing things. Robots doing things that they can do well frees up humans to do things that they can do well. And that's what's always happened with these innovations. It isn't that people are done out of work per se. They are replaced in certain jobs and they do other stuff. That's what's always happened. I mean, it casts people's minds back, for those who are around, back to the 1980s and 90s, when it was believed that with automation, with all the technology being used in offices, we would end up being just doing a 4 or even a 3-day week because everything would be automated. That isn't what happened. And we're also told there'll be a paperless office. Meanwhile, computing takes up more paper than ever before. So, these things never work out in the way that's suggested by futurists. Rather, robots will have their place, and they will be used by humans. So I'm quite sanguine about it. But Mark, and I guess this is your interest, Mr. Mark, as a businessman. If robots are the new growing things, as a business, you'd better get into it, right?
Well, I agree. I think this is the thing. Wake up, get into the game. Because the bottom line is that Hyundai is not the only company. Humanoid robots in their operations include companies such as Amazon, Tesla, even the Chinese car maker BYD. They are now all moving into this space. Many manufacturers, whether you're in food, whether you're in automotive, whether you make any kind of widget, the fact of the matter is that robots are very efficient. The one thing that you may be aware of, and you would have seen by the company called Boston Dynamics, is that they've sort of shown what really robots can do. Most notably, Spot the robot dog, as it's known, can do many agile things. It can flip, it can jump, it can move, and it does sort of look like a robotic dog. It's very clever. Okay, it's good. It may not have practical purposes, but what you can see is that maybe it could, in things where it comes to things where a human being may not want to go. For example, it might be in a chemical plant where you need things cleaning, or certain things where a robot can just be far more efficient at picking and packing and pushing. So those I definitely see as being important. But the thing that I do think is important, and I think you've alluded to it, is it takes nothing away from the human mind. The human is still in control. The human is somebody who's there, who will be there to work with the robots. And I think you're right. We're in an evolution, maybe even a revolution, where software and hardware are working together with the humans. I think it's obvious, and we do need to sort of point to that elephant in the room, whether it's a robot elephant or not. But the fact of the matter is, it will replace jobs. But that may not necessarily be a bad thing, because other jobs will come up. There'll be software engineers, there'll be hardware engineers, there'll be those who perhaps need to do different types of jobs because new products can be made. Because products that sometimes design engineers work on may not necessarily be scalable, whereas robots can produce them much more efficiently. And so what you might find is that companies can really scale much better. Now, the one thing that we know, of course, is artificial intelligence. Now, we already recognize that this is automating a lot of the processes, both at the design and, of course, the operations level. Look at Elon Musk's electric car maker. He's using a combination of, artificial intelligence and robotics throughout his manufacturing plants at Tesla. So I think that we're really at that point where we just simply have to recognize that things aren't going to go away. So you're right. Those Luddites, well, that legacy manufacturing, look at it, go to a museum and sort of smile. But the fact of the matter is that it is true that from a commercial perspective, if you really want to compete, you almost certainly need to be in the game. I think that there is a place where robots and artificial intelligence won't play, but they will be in a very niche, almost cottage industry sort of realm. But certainly when it comes to scale, you have to have robots. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, you're going to be left behind. I mean, if you take a new innovation, they tend to have their time, and eventually they find their place within the economy. That's really what I was saying earlier. Not the robots are going away. They will eventually find their place where that is, but people will know how to use them. At the moment, people who aren't using this sort of robotics technology, particularly, as you say, when they're trying to work at a large scale, they're going to fall behind. So now's the time to make the changes, because otherwise it's too late, because your competitors will get ahead.
Correct. Well, look, let's take a different angle, something which may or may not be completely to your own tastes.
Yep.
If you are binge watching TV and you're craving junk food in your diet, instead swallow the remote control. It might keep your stomach quiet. Well, the whole point here is, of course, junk food adverts are going to be banned on television and indeed online. And this is part of a drive to tackle childhood obesity. Now, from the United Kingdom's point of view, as well as many other countries around the world, the ban, in theory, is meant to stop the really growing use of food drinks with high fat, salt, and sugar. Mr. Pete, what's your thought about banning adverts of this sort of nature? And do you think it really will work?
Well, I'm a big advocate of free speech and allowing people to express things, but that doesn't necessarily mean persuasive adverts that trick you into eating food that's bad for you. See, I think there's a balance to be held. The Bible says, 1 Corinthians 6, verse 12, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. You should be allowed to have information freely available about different foodstuffs. But if it's presented in such a way as ads on TV, that it seems that food that is bad for you is actually good for you, even if it's not technically lying, but it's being very persuasive, I think that is a bad thing. I don't have a problem with it being banned. In fact, I think you could be more nuanced about it, in that you could advertise it, but not make false claims, even by imputation or persuasion. But I think that's difficult. Let's just say it may be possible, and they could do some experimentation in that area with testing whether you can do that. But I think a ban, for me, even though I don't like government intervention in this case, the stakes are so high, pun intended, that people are dying of this, of having too much sugar in their diet.
Yeah,
they need help.
Well, they do need help. What they're trying to do is particularly children, but I think it does also apply to adults as well. When they're just sitting, watching these programs wash over their TV or their computer screens, however way they choose to view a program, they're just absorbing and consuming soft drinks, chocolates, sweets, pizzas, and ice creams. And that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, I think a ban, this is just from my point of view, from a commercial point of view, this is clearly going to affect a lot of broadcast companies. They gain a lot of revenue and sponsorships from these type of companies that make these products. But even if that were to be the case, I can assure you that these advertisers will find other ways of getting in front of the audience. I think where the government steps in, it's surely got to encourage people to be much more active. Get out and about, walk about, play a game, have some form of activity in your daily routine, because there's nothing wrong necessarily with having a pizza or a chocolate or even a soft drink. I think it's down to volume, surely. I mean, if you're just constantly binging, not just on the TV, but on binging on food whilst you're watching the TV, that can't be healthy for anybody. So it's got to be a combination of education just as much as legislation.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I suppose it is exacerbated as listening to you say that about binge eating as well as binge watching. And, yeah,
Yes.
You could watch one of these adverts, get online and order the product even while you're still watching the advert about it, couldn't you? You could get in there.
Well, that's right.
I just think this has really transformed the Western world. People are fat and sick because of the terrible food that we eat. I think it's a mistake to say that we all eat. Obviously, Mark and Pete listeners are amongst the most intelligent and healthiest in the world and may not be taken in by such things. But I'm just talking generally, obviously.
Well, what's interesting to sort of reinforce the problem, the National Health Service, the NHS data shows that almost 1 in 10 reception-aged children are now living with obesity, while 1 in 5 children have tooth decay by the age of 5. Now, it's estimated that an obesity cost to the NHS is more than £11 billion for every year. So you think about that. That's billions of pounds that are trying to tackle the problem. So I can clearly see there is definitely a need for the campaign. The question, of course, is, are they really going to succeed? Well, maybe that sort of leads to our next story. Maybe it's a case of game, set, and scratch. If your talent for tennis is in poor class and you have feet of clay, perhaps you should be put out to grass when your game is out of play. Well, quite remarkably, the organisers of a professional women's tournament, which has gone viral on social media, ironically, because of a wildcard player's dire performance, have acknowledged that she should never have been allowed to play. Now, Mr. Pete, I'm all for activity. I think it's great, especially from our previous little subject. Yes. But the fact of the matter is, surely, how on earth did the International Tennis Federation, ITF, allow the Egyptian player Hajar Abdelkeltada to come in at the age of 21 and lost 6-love, served 20 double faults during the first round match? Even you might have done better. What say you about this story?
Well, I think it is a shame. I mean, because it's like a public humiliation, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why it needs to be questioned. I mean, if someone does badly, that's fair enough. But the 20 double faults probably point at extreme nervousness. So it may be she was, I mean, I think this is the case. She's just very, very inexperienced and overwhelmed by being placed in the spotlight like that. So it's not really a sport, is it, when it gets to that level? It's just, public suffering with ball boys in attendance. It stops being a sport because of the cruelty, as I see it, of putting the young lady, whose name obviously I could say just trips off the tongue, I just choose not to. She putting in that position, I think, is just a cruel thing to do. And I don't know what you do about it, because
Yes.
you're asking the country's federation to recommend someone, and they recommended someone who couldn't play. What can you do?
Well, it goes even worse than that because this
Oh dear.
particular player only won 3 points during a 37-minute debut. And those points were 2 double faults by her opponent and an unforced error from a bemused German whose
Yes.
name was Lorena Schadel.
Yes.
So the match was part,
So she didn't
incidentally,
win a point. Really.
she didn't
He was
actually
gifted 3 points.
gifted them. Yes, correct. So it's most unfortunate, but the ITF, I mean, were obviously conducting this women's tournament. Now, what's interesting is that when you think about the scrutiny, why didn't they test the standard of this? Because this person was given like a wild card. Why on earth was she allowed to play? Because really, it's almost as though she had never played tennis before. And it does tend to undermine a tournament that's trying to bring in standards and credibility.
Yes, I mean, as I understand it, wildcards are normally given to people who are of the right standard. It's just that they missed out by a technicality. I thought that's what they did anyway. Perhaps I missed my misunderstanding on my part. Listeners will let us know in comments. But that being the case, if you did what I said, so it's someone with a reputation who didn't technically get through, you let them through.
Well,
but in this case, they didn't have if they had a reputation, it wasn't for playing tennis, let's put it that way. So, yeah, I do think that something needs to be done, maybe something along the lines of what I said. You might not want to do an actual test, but you could ask for proof that they could play. You could show footage of a previous game. Anything like that it would be quite simple to put that in place. Now, this has happened, okay? We can't change it. Unfortunately, this has already happened, but you can put things in place in the future, surely.
Yes, I think this has fallen between two stools, as to say, because the Egyptian Tennis Federation said they'd like to clarify that the lady in question, Hajar, was not registered with the Egyptian Tennis Federation. However, that the player had been residing in Kenya, and they granted the wild card. But either way, you would have thought that somewhere down the line,
you say, "Can you actually play?
Can you actually play?
What is this? Holding up a tennis racket. What is this?"
which is caused.
You recognise it,
yes. Literally, in the media. Well, it's quite evident, as far as I'm concerned, that either way, really, it's all about standards, isn't it? I mean, maybe what we should be looking for is not just automated robots in manufacturing. Maybe we should have automated tennis players. And just have the tennis match between the robots whilst binge watching TV. I mean, who knows? That could be the future.
Yes, I guess you're right about that's it. We leave you with a world in which robots will continue to do more, governments will continue to ban more, and some people will still be spectacularly unqualified. Well, that's it for this week from Mark and myself. We'll catch you the same time next week.